Have you ever looked into the eyes of a narcissist and felt something darker than pride or selfishness staring back at you? It's a chilling moment when you realize they're no longer just toxic, but something far more sinister. There comes a point when a narcissist doesn't just manipulate for control or attention, they cross a line and give themselves over to something evil, something that feeds on the destruction of an empath's light. In this video, I'm going to reveal the terrifying signs that show when that shift has happened, and why empaths, those with the purest hearts, always become the primary target of their darkness. Some of these signs may shock you, some may sound all too familiar, but by the end, you'll see the pattern clearly. Stay with me until the last sign, because it's the one most people miss, and it could be the key to protecting your soul. And before we dive in, tell me in the comments, have you ever witnessed a narcissist reveal a side of themselves that felt truly evil? Your story might help another empath feel less alone. And if you find value here, subscribe, because together we're bringing light where narcissists only want shadows. There is a stage in the life of every empath who has dealt with a narcissist when the mask finally shatters, and it is one of the most terrifying yet clarifying experiences you can go through. At first, narcissists are masters of disguise. They put on a mask of charm, of sweetness, of connection, and they make you believe that you've met someone who truly understands you. Their words flow with kindness, their gestures seem thoughtful, and their eyes sparkle with admiration. You think you've found someone safe, someone loyal, maybe even someone extraordinary. But this is only the mask, a carefully crafted illusion designed to hook you in and keep you close. Over time, as the relationship deepens, cracks begin to show. You notice how their compliments come with hidden barbs, how their support is conditional, and how their love feels more like control. At first you brush it off. Maybe they're just stressed. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe you're overthinking. But then one day, the mask falls completely, and what you see underneath is not just flawed humanity. It is a predatory nature that was there all along, now revealed without shame. The narcissist no longer bothers to charm you, no longer hides behind sweet words or fake smiles. Instead, they openly show you who they really are: cold, manipulative, and even cruel. Their eyes no longer shine with admiration, but burn with resentment. Their voice loses its warmth and becomes cutting, mocking, or flat. They begin to take pleasure in watching you struggle, almost as if your pain feeds them. And in that moment, the reality hits you. The charm was never real, it was only bait. What makes this so chilling is the way they seem to switch personalities, as if a hidden door inside them has opened and a darker self has stepped forward. You realize that everything you thought was genuine was simply a mask, and now that it's gone, you're left facing the raw truth of their nature. For an empath, this moment can feel like betrayal at the deepest level, because empaths love deeply, trust openly, and see the best in others. To discover that the person you poured so much light into was only using that light to hide their shadows is devastating. But it is also the moment of awakening. The shattered mask is painful, but it gives you clarity. You finally see that you are not dealing with someone who simply makes mistakes or has flaws, but with someone who willingly chooses manipulation and cruelty. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. This is where your strength begins, not in fixing them, not in excusing them, but in recognizing the evil behind the charm and choosing to protect your own light from being devoured. There comes a terrifying shift in the behavior of a narcissist when control is no longer enough for them. In the beginning, everything they did, the gaslighting, the lies, the silent treatments, was about keeping power over you, about making sure you were tied to their world and playing by their rules. But there is a darker stage, one that reveals just how far they have given themselves over to evil. They begin to take pleasure in causing pain. It's no longer only about manipulating you into submission.
It becomes about watching you break, about seeing your tears, about hearing the tremor in your voice when you question your own worth. To them, your suffering is a kind of twisted entertainment. They study your reactions like a predator studies prey, and every time you fall into despair, they feel stronger. It's as if your heartbreak feeds something hollow inside them, a bottomless hunger for destruction. For the empath, this realization is crushing because you remember when they once smiled at your joy, when they once seemed to celebrate your happiness. But now you see the truth. The smile was never for your light. It was for the power they could gain from dimming it. When you're happy, they feel threatened. When you're hurting, they feel alive. You may notice small signs first, like the way they seem amused when you're anxious, or how they provoke arguments at your most vulnerable moments. Over time, it escalates into intentional cruelty, where they deliberately set traps to wound you, then watch coldly as you bleed emotionally. And what makes it so chilling is the subtle delight they cannot fully hide. The curve of a smirk when you cry, the gleam in their eye when you doubt yourself, the calm satisfaction in their silence while you unravel. For an empath who feels the world deeply and loves with sincerity, this kind of cruelty feels inhuman, almost monstrous. You realize you're not just dealing with someone who struggles with empathy. You are dealing with someone who gains strength from your weakness. This is where the relationship crosses into dangerous territory, because their goal is no longer just control, it's your destruction. The narcissist has surrendered to a darkness that feeds on your pain, and once you see this, you can never look at them the same again. What once felt like love now reveals itself as a battlefield, and your tears have become their victory. But here lies the hidden power for the empath. Recognizing this truth frees you from the illusion. When you know that your suffering is their source of pleasure, you stop handing it to them so easily. You begin to guard your emotions, protect your peace, and rise above the traps they set. And though they may revel in your pain, they cannot withstand your healing, for nothing terrifies a narcissist more than an empath who refuses to be broken. One of the most disturbing signs that a narcissist has given themselves to evil is when they begin twisting spiritual truth into weapons. This is not the same as a hypocrite who makes mistakes while claiming faith. This is something darker. The narcissist learns to cloak their cruelty in the language of righteousness, to disguise control as guidance, and to use the words of scripture, morality, or light not to heal, but to enslave. For the empath, this is especially dangerous because empaths are naturally drawn to spiritual growth, to higher truth, to the pursuit of light. The narcissist sees this hunger and exploits it. They quote verses out of context to shame you, reminding you of obedience while ignoring compassion. They hold morality over your head like a chain, not to encourage your growth, but to keep you in submission. They use phrases like, "God wants you to forgive me," or "real love means sacrifice," as traps to excuse their abuse. They might even speak in the tone of a wise teacher, but behind their words lies a heart that delights in distortion. What makes this tactic so sinister is that it makes the empath question their own spirituality. You wonder, am I not holy enough? Am I failing God? Am I the one in the wrong? And while you're wrestling with guilt and confusion, the narcissist grows stronger, hiding behind the illusion of light. It is a counterfeit light, a mask of spirituality used not to guide souls upward, but to drag them down. This is how evil operates, not through obvious darkness that everyone can see, but through twisting what is sacred until it becomes a tool of bondage. For the empath, who reveres truth and seeks love in its purest form, this twisting feels like poison. It corrupts the very things that give you strength, faith, kindness, forgiveness, and turns them into chains around your neck. The narcissist knows that if they can corrupt your view of truth, they can weaken your connection to the very source of your light. But here is the revelation. Once you see this manipulation for what it is, their power over you crumbles. You begin to notice how they only quote scripture when it benefits them, never when it convicts them. You see how they use morality to trap others while living without accountability themselves. And you realize that true light never enslaves. True truth never humiliates. True faith never demands your silence in the face of abuse. For the empath, this moment is painful, but liberating. You begin to reclaim your connection to what is real, what is divine, what is uncorrupted. And once you do, the narcissist's twisted weapons lose their sharpness. They may try to wield sacred words as chains, but you now recognize them for what they are, empty distortions that reveal not holiness, but the depth of evil that has consumed them.
There is a moment in dealing with a narcissist when you realize you are no longer speaking to someone who simply lacks kindness. You are standing before a soul that feels empty, hollow, and cold. This coldness is beyond what most people can imagine because it is not just indifference or selfishness. It is the chilling absence of empathy, almost as if their humanity has been switched off. At first, you notice it in small ways. You're crying, your heart is breaking, and they just stare at you with blank eyes, offering no comfort, no warmth, no recognition of your pain. Where most people would reach out, hold your hand, or at least soften their tone, the narcissist remains unmoved, almost irritated by your vulnerability. It's like talking to a wall of ice. Your words echo back to you, but nothing reaches them. Over time, you see it more clearly. They do not flinch at cruelty. They can watch someone suffer and feel nothing but impatience or even amusement. Their laughter comes alive at another's downfall, but they show no joy at genuine kindness or love. It's as though their emotional spectrum has narrowed down to power, envy, and contempt. For the empath, who feels deeply and aches to heal others, this coldness is one of the most painful discoveries. You realize you've been pouring your warmth into a void, hoping for it to reflect back, but the void only absorbs and drains. It is terrifying because it feels inhuman, as if the soul you thought you knew has been replaced with something mechanical, something unfeeling. And in a sense, that's exactly what has happened. The narcissist has given themselves so fully to their darkness that empathy no longer lives within them. They don't just lack compassion, they actively reject it, seeing it as weakness. What makes this realization devastating is the way they mimic emotion when it suits them. They can still fake compassion when they want to impress others, still perform kindness if it gives them admiration. But when the mask slips and you're alone with them, you see the truth. There is no warmth, no real concern, no genuine heartbeat of love behind their eyes. It is a chilling emptiness that cannot be hidden forever. For the empath, this coldness feels like death itself because it is the absence of what makes us human, the ability to care, to connect, to feel another's heart. But it is also the turning point. Once you recognize this absence, you stop trying to melt the ice. You stop waiting for warmth that will never come. You begin to accept that no amount of love can awaken what they have chosen to bury. And in that acceptance, you reclaim your own warmth. Because your empathy, your compassion, your light, they do not belong in the frozen wasteland of someone who has shut off their soul. They belong in places where they can be seen, cherished,
and returned. One of the clearest and most terrifying signs that a narcissist has fully surrendered themselves to evil is their obsession with destroying the empath's light. At first, it may seem confusing. Why would someone be threatened by your kindness, your peace, or your faith? Why would they resent the very qualities that make you gentle, trustworthy, and loving? But to a narcissist who has chosen darkness, your light is unbearable. It reminds them of everything they lost, everything they rejected, and everything they will never truly have. Your calm presence exposes their chaos. Your honesty unmasks their lies. Your faith highlights their emptiness. And so instead of being inspired by your light, they become obsessed with extinguishing it. You'll notice how they always seem unsettled when you're happy, how they pick fights right after moments of peace, or how they roll their eyes when you speak about hope or faith. They cannot stand to see you shine because your glow magnifies their shadows. What begins as subtle jabs or sarcasm can grow into relentless attacks, belittling your beliefs, mocking your positivity, and trying to convince you that your compassion makes you naive or weak. For the empath, this is deeply confusing because you expect others to be drawn to light, not repelled by it. But with a narcissist, your inner glow is not a comfort, it is a threat to the dark identity they've built. They can't control it, they can't replicate it, and they can't tolerate it, so they turn all their energy towards breaking it down. They'll drain you with constant negativity, pull you into endless arguments, or target the very practices that keep you grounded: your prayer, your meditation, your quiet time of reflection. If they see you at peace, they'll disturb it. If they see you growing stronger, they'll attempt to sabotage it. Their goal is not just control anymore, it's spiritual warfare. They want to see your joy crumble, your hope vanish, your spirit dim. Because in their twisted reality, the destruction of your light is the only way they can feel powerful. But here is where the empath's journey shifts. Once you realize that their obsession is not about you being weak, but about you being strong, you begin to understand your true value. Their attacks are not proof of your failure, but confirmation of your strength. Your light is proof that despite everything they have done, goodness, peace, and faith still live in you, and that terrifies them. So they target it relentlessly, but the more you guard it, the more they expose themselves. And eventually, you see that their obsession is not your burden to carry, but their inner torment revealed. They may try to destroy your glow, but they cannot touch the source of it, because your light does not come from them. It never did.
There comes a stage in the life of a narcissist where their cruelty no longer feels random, no longer feels like a reaction to anger or frustration. It begins to feel systematic, patterned, almost ritualistic. And this is one of the clearest and most terrifying signs that they have given themselves to evil. Their toxic behaviors, whether it's the silent treatment, humiliation, or smear campaigns, are no longer occasional tools. They become repeated practices, carried out with precision and consistency, as if they were sacred acts. For the empath, this is devastating, because at first, you might believe these moments of cruelty are temporary lapses, maybe stress-related, maybe triggered by outside pressures. But over time, you notice a rhythm. You notice how the same punishments come again and again, not by accident, but by design. The narcissist builds patterns of pain, and those patterns become rituals they seem to worship.
The silent treatment, for example, is not just their way of cooling off after a disagreement. It becomes their altar of power. They withdraw their presence, cut off their voice, and leave you in an agonizing state of confusion. And they do it deliberately, not to resolve conflict, but to starve you emotionally, to make you beg for their attention. This ritual is repeated so often it becomes predictable. They know exactly how long to disappear, exactly when to resurface, and exactly how to act as if nothing happened. It is a cruel cycle, but for them, it is intoxicating. Every time they enact it, they feel in control. Every time you crumble under the weight of their silence, they feel stronger. Humiliation, too, becomes one of their chosen rituals. At first, it may be subtle. Sarcasm slipped into a conversation. A cutting remark disguised as a joke. A comment about your flaws in front of others. But as their mask fades and their evil deepens, humiliation becomes more direct, more intentional, and more frequent. They begin to find opportunities to belittle you, to tear down your achievements, to make you feel small in your own skin. And they don't do it once in a while. They repeat it as if it's a sacred act, as if your humiliation is a sacrifice on their altar of pride. For the empath, who values dignity, respect, and encouragement, this repeated ritual of humiliation can feel soul-crushing. You start to question your worth, your talents, even your very identity. But the truth is, the narcissist's obsession with tearing you down reveals how much they fear your light. Then there are the smear campaigns, one of the most destructive rituals in their arsenal. The narcissist doesn't just lie about you or spread gossip occasionally. Once they have surrendered to their darkness, they treat character assassination like a mission. They carefully plant seeds of doubt in the minds of your friends, your family, even your community. They repeat their stories over and over, rehearsing them until lies sound like truth. They turn people against you, isolate you, and then stand back to watch as you face the fallout. What makes this so insidious is not just the damage it causes to your reputation, but the ritualistic way they carry it out. They don't smear you because of a single disagreement. They do it because it feeds their ego, because it strengthens their sense of control, because it has become a cycle of destruction they cannot resist. These repeated toxic behaviors, the silence, the humiliation, the smears, become more than tactics. They become patterns that define the relationship, rhythms that dictate the empath's emotional state. And for the narcissist, they are rituals that must be carried out again and again to keep their sense of power alive. This is what makes it terrifying. Rituals are usually associated with the sacred, with devotion, with worship. But in the hands of a narcissist who has chosen evil, rituals become the worship of cruelty itself. For the empath, witnessing this rise of cruel rituals can be deeply disorienting. You may wonder, how can someone repeat such hurtful behaviors without remorse? How can they carry on as if destroying another person is part of their daily life? But this is the nature of evil. It thrives on repetition, on patterns that wear down the soul, on rituals that normalize what should never be acceptable. The narcissist repeats these acts, not because they are unaware, but because they are fully invested in them. Each cycle reinforces their darkness. Each ritual strengthens their bond with cruelty. Each repeated behavior makes their soul colder and their grip on you tighter. Yet, within this darkness, there is also revelation for the empath. Recognizing the ritualistic nature of their cruelty allows you to see the pattern clearly. It helps you understand that their actions are not your fault, not your failure, and not something you could have prevented with more love, more patience, or more forgiveness. These rituals are not about you. They are about the narcissist's worship of power and destruction. Once you see the cycle, you begin to step out of it. You stop dancing to the rhythm of their cruelty. You stop waiting for their silence to end. Stop shrinking under their humiliation. Stop fearing the lies they spread. You begin to reclaim your identity outside of their rituals. And here lies the most powerful truth. While the narcissist may repeat their cruel acts like sacred rituals, they are not sacred at all. They are empty performances of a soul that has chosen darkness. True sacredness is found in love, in compassion, in truth, in light. And that is where the empath must return, not to the rituals of cruelty, but to the rituals of healing, of self-love, of connecting with what is divine and untouchable within. The rise of cruel rituals may mark the narcissist's descent into evil, but it can also mark the empath's awakening into strength, clarity, and freedom. There is a point in the journey with a narcissist when their contempt for what is good, sacred, and holy can no longer be hidden. At first, they may tolerate your spirituality, your prayers, or the practices that keep you centered in peace. They may even pretend to respect them, mimicking reverence to win your trust. But as their darkness grows, their true nature begins to reveal itself. And one of the chilling signs that they have given themselves to evil is when they openly mock the sacred. They ridicule prayer, kindness, or any form of higher guidance you rely on, not because they don't understand it, but because it confronts the emptiness inside them. Your faith threatens their control. Your devotion reminds them of their rejection of truth. Your light exposes their shadow. And instead of being drawn to the warmth of what is holy, they lash out against it with ridicule and scorn. For the empath, this moment is heartbreaking. You may have hoped that your faith could inspire them, that your prayers could cover them, that your kindness could soften their heart. You may have believed that the love of God, shown through your actions, might awaken something good within them. But instead, you find them scoffing when you pray, rolling their eyes when you speak of faith, and twisting your devotion into weakness. They might sneer at your kindness, calling it naive. They might mock your belief in forgiveness, saying you're blind. They might belittle your spiritual practices, as though bowing your head or lifting your heart to God is foolish. And what makes it so painful is that these are the very things that sustain you, the very practices that anchor your soul. When a narcissist mocks the sacred, it is not just an attack on your habits. It is an attack on your identity, your values, and your deepest connection to what is holy.
When a narcissist gives themselves fully to evil, lies stop being just a tool for survival or manipulation. They become an addiction, a lifeline they cannot function without. Their entire world revolves around illusion,
They no longer distort the truth just to get what they want. They twist reality itself until it bends to their narrative. To them, lying is not a means to an end. It becomes the end. Every story, every memory, every interaction is reshaped in their favor, until you are left questioning whether you can trust your own mind. They thrive in this fog because the more confused you become, the more power they feel surging through them. They rewrite history with such confidence that even when you know the truth, you hesitate. They will deny events that happened right in front of you. They will change dates, details, and words with ease, watching with satisfaction as your certainty cracks. This is gaslighting at its highest form, not just occasional, but constant, a reality they craft to keep you trapped. What makes it terrifying is not just the deception, but the delight they take in watching you spin in circles, doubting yourself. It is as if your confusion is their nourishment. Their addiction to lies also makes them masters of illusion in public. To the outside world, they often wear the mask of kindness, charm, or even spirituality. They can perform compassion so well that others are blinded to their darkness, leaving you isolated and doubting your own perception. In private, though, their lies become daggers, cutting at your memory, your faith, and your ability to trust yourself. They create alternate versions of events, and soon their story becomes the one everyone else believes. That isolation is part of the trap. It convinces you that perhaps the narcissist is right, and you are the one who is broken. This addiction also feeds on escalation. A single lie is never enough. They need layers upon layers of deceit to keep control. They build castles in the air, illusions stacked so high that they can no longer separate fact from fiction themselves. And in this web of delusion, they feel untouchable. But for the empath, the cost is deep. You begin to feel like you are living in two worlds, the truth you see and the distorted version they demand you accept. That split eats away at your peace, leaving you drained, restless, and full of self-doubt. In the end, their love for lies is more than dishonesty. It is a declaration of war against reality itself. For the narcissist, truth is an enemy to be destroyed, and illusion is their kingdom. What makes this sign so terrifying is the way it erodes the very ground beneath your feet, leaving you in a world where nothing feels stable and no one seems to believe you. This is where the empath must recognize the depth of the darkness they are dealing with, because the addiction to lies is not just manipulation anymore. It is the narcissist's chosen way of life. Isolation of the empath, cutting you off from support, making you feel alone in your fight against their darkness. Isolation of the empath is one of the most sinister tactics a narcissist uses because it goes beyond simple manipulation. It becomes a method of spiritual and emotional imprisonment. At first, the narcissist may subtly plant seeds of doubt in your mind about the people closest to you. They'll say things like, "They don't really understand you," or "I'm the only one who truly gets you." These words, though spoken softly,
are calculated daggers meant to loosen your ties to your family, your friends, even your community. Over time, those seeds grow, and you may start questioning the intentions of people who once felt safe. The narcissist thrives in that confusion, because every relationship you doubt becomes another thread cut from your support system. Then comes the more obvious phase, the isolation itself. Phone calls you used to make suddenly feel like a betrayal to them. Outings with loved ones become arguments, accusations, or guilt trips. Slowly, your world shrinks until it revolves almost entirely around them. They trap you in this narrowing circle because in isolation, their control is absolute. Without voices of truth around you, it's easier for their lies to become your reality. But the isolation isn't only physical, it's deeply emotional too. The narcissist wants you to feel unseen, unheard, and unworthy, even when others are near. They create an invisible cage, convincing you that no one could possibly understand what you're going through, so you stop reaching out altogether. This is how they feed their power, by stripping you of the very connections that remind you of your worth. And yet, in this darkest space, something powerful happens for the empath. In solitude, while the narcissist believes they've won, the empath begins to see the truth more clearly. Without the noise of manipulation, a deeper awareness awakens, a realization that the isolation is not proof of weakness, but proof of the narcissist's fear. They isolate you because your light terrifies them. Your faith, your compassion, your resilience, all of it is a threat to their illusion. This is why recognizing the tactic of isolation is so important. It's not about you being unloved or unsupported. It's about the narcissist trying to sever you from your sources of strength. The very moment you see this truth, the cage begins to crack. Even in forced loneliness, your spirit can rise. Because while they can attempt to cut you off from others, they can never truly cut you off from yourself or from the higher light that continues to guide you.
There comes a moment in the empath's journey with the narcissist when something far deeper than manipulation begins to show. It is no longer just the cruel words, the twisting games, or the calculated silences. It becomes something you can feel when you look into their eyes. At first, you may dismiss it as exhaustion or mood swings, but over time, the shadows become undeniable. Their gaze shifts from human warmth to something hollow, as though a light inside them has gone out and been replaced with something darker. You notice the absence of genuine joy, the lack of spark that once animated their charm. Instead, there is a heaviness, a coldness that lingers in their stare, leaving you unsettled even when no words are spoken. Empaths are highly sensitive to energy, and so when this shift occurs, it feels almost supernatural. Their eyes no longer mirror life, but instead reflect a void, a depth of darkness that feels foreign, even predatory. You might find yourself avoiding eye contact, sensing a strange chill whenever their gaze locks on yours. It's as though their very presence begins to drain rather than connect, pulling at your spirit rather than meeting it. This change is not accidental. As the narcissist leans further into their cruelty, lies, and manipulations, their inner world becomes consumed by the shadows they feed.
What once could have been masked by charm and false light now breaks through in its truest form. The eyes, once tools of seduction and deception, become windows to a soul that no longer reflects empathy, love, or humanity. Instead, they reveal an alliance with something far darker, a hunger for control, a pleasure in destruction, a presence that feels almost demonic in its intensity. For the empath, this is both terrifying and clarifying. Terrifying because the person they thought they knew seems to vanish before them, replaced by someone unrecognizable. Clarifying because in those eyes, the truth can no longer be denied. It's the moment you realize the danger is not just emotional, it's spiritual. The shadows in their eyes tell the story of how far they've fallen, how deeply they've given themselves over to evil. And once you've seen it, you can never unsee it.
There comes a moment in the journey of an empath when the narcissist's world begins to reveal its true shape. At first, it might look like they're simply social or well-connected. You see them with friends, family, or co-workers, and you assume those bonds are natural and healthy. But over time, the mask slips and something far darker emerges. The narcissist does not just want companionship, they want accomplices. They form alliances not out of love or genuine care, but out of strategy. They know their own darkness cannot survive in the light, so they surround themselves with people who are either blind to their cruelty or worse, share in it. These are the toxic circles that amplify their evil. What you begin to notice is that these connections are not based on kindness, respect, or mutual growth. Instead, they are rooted in gossip, manipulation, and control. It is as if the narcissist builds a fortress around themselves, brick by brick, using toxic people as the walls. And once you step too close to the truth, they unleash this army against you. This alliance is not accidental. The narcissist carefully chooses who will stand by them, not out of genuine loyalty, but out of mutual weakness. They look for people who crave validation, who fear rejection, or who have their own unhealed wounds that make them easy to control. These circles often include enablers, flying monkeys, and even other narcissists. Together, they create a web that traps the empath in isolation and confusion. Suddenly, you are not just dealing with one manipulator, you are facing an entire network designed to make you doubt yourself. It becomes a game of survival. Every move you make is watched, twisted, and reported back to the narcissist. Every attempt to defend yourself is used as evidence against you. This is how the alliance works. It feeds on lies, thrives on distortion, and crushes the target under the weight of collective judgment. And because so many voices are echoing the same narrative, the empath begins to wonder, am I really the problem? The cruelty of these alliances lies not only in their strength, but also in their persistence. The narcissist knows that as long as they have a crowd cheering for them, they can continue their rituals of abuse without consequence. Silent treatments, smear campaigns, humiliation, these are not isolated tactics. They are performed as if they are sacred acts, validated and celebrated within their toxic circle. Each member plays a role. Some spread rumors, some defend the narcissist's actions, some mock the empath's pain. It becomes a ritual of cruelty, repeated over and over until it feels like a ceremony of destruction. And the more the empath suffers, the more powerful the narcissist feels, because now their darkness has witnesses and supporters. They no longer hide who they are. Instead, they find strength in numbers, as if evil itself has drawn together a congregation. What makes this stage especially chilling is the energy it creates. When you walk into a room filled with such a circle, you can feel the weight of their collective darkness. Their eyes might smile at you, their mouths might form words of politeness, but beneath it all, there is mockery, ridicule, and an unspoken agreement to tear you down. It is almost ritualistic, as if they are bound together by a common purpose to extinguish your light. You sense it in the way conversations twist when you enter, in the subtle silences that follow your words, and in the smirks exchanged behind your back. These are not coincidences. This is a spiritual alliance, a gathering of energies that thrive on deception and destruction. And while they may look like ordinary people on the surface, their unity creates something that feels almost demonic. It is not just you against one narcissist anymore. It is you against an entire system designed to break your spirit. Yet, within this alliance, there is also a revelation. For the empath, facing such a circle becomes a lesson in truth. You begin to see that not every smile is genuine, not every relationship is rooted in goodness, and not every group is safe. The pain of betrayal cuts deep, but it also opens your eyes. You realize that toxic people find comfort in one another because misery loves company. They cling to each other not out of love, but out of shared shadows. And while they may appear united, their unity is fragile, built on lies and fear. The same way they once turned on you, they will eventually turn on each other. This is the nature of toxic alliances. They are temporary, unstable, and destined to collapse. Darkness can imitate unity, but it cannot sustain it. For the empath, the challenge is surviving until that collapse comes. The isolation they create is perhaps the hardest part. You are made to feel like no one sees you, no one hears you, and no one believes you. The circle amplifies this silence, making you doubt your own reality. But here lies your strength. Unlike them, your connections are rooted in truth, love, and authenticity. You do not need an army to validate your worth. You do not need a circle to echo your lies. All you need is the quiet power of your own light. The narcissist fears this more than anything, because your light exposes what they are trying so desperately to hide. And while their circle may shout loudly, their noise cannot drown out the steady, undeniable presence of truth. In the end, alliances with toxic circles reveal something vital. They show the empath the depth of the narcissist's desperation. They show how far darkness will go to maintain control. And they remind you that when many voices rise against the truth, it is not because the truth is weak, but because the lie is fragile. A single candle can expose a room full of shadows. A single voice of clarity can disrupt an entire chorus of deception. And the single empath who chooses to stand firm in their light can outlast any toxic alliance. The circle may surround you, mock you, and even try to destroy you, but in the end, their unity is built on sand, while your spirit is rooted in rock. And when the storm comes, as it always does, it will not be you who falls. It will be them.
The final betrayal is not just an act, it is a revelation.
It is the moment when every mask, every illusion, and every excuse crumbles into dust, and the true nature of the narcissist stands in front of you, undeniable and raw. For so long, the empath may have held on to a fragile thread of hope. Hope that somewhere deep within there remained a flicker of love, a shred of humanity, or at least the possibility of redemption. But the final betrayal is when all of that hope dies, because their actions prove that they have fully surrendered to darkness. It is not just cruelty, it is a declaration that they have chosen evil over love, control over connection, destruction over life. And the wound it leaves is deeper than any previous cut, because it marks the end of illusions. This betrayal often comes in the form of something so unthinkable that it shakes you to your very core. It may be the betrayal of your deepest trust, exposing secrets you shared in confidence and weaponizing them against you. It could be the destruction of your reputation through lies and smear campaigns designed to isolate you and leave you defenseless. It may even reach into the sacred, mocking your faith, your values, or the very essence of what makes you human. Whatever form it takes, the final betrayal is not random. It is deliberate, calculated, and infused with malice, as if they take pride in delivering a wound so devastating that you will never rise again. For the empath, this moment is not just about pain, it is about awakening. Because as much as it hurts, it also provides clarity. There is no more doubt about who they truly are. The charm, the false apologies, the promises of change, none of it matters anymore. Their actions prove beyond all denial that what you are dealing with is not just a broken person, but someone who has willingly embraced darkness as their identity. It is a painful truth, but it is also a freeing one. Because once you see that they cannot and will not return from the path they've chosen, you are no longer bound by the chains of false hope. The final betrayal is also spiritual in nature. It is as though they have made an unspoken pact, not with love or light, but with destruction itself. Their soul feels unreachable, their eyes empty of empathy, and their presence heavy with malice. And while that reality may fill you with grief, it also calls forth something powerful within you, the will to separate, to protect yourself, and to reclaim the light they have tried so hard to extinguish. The truth is, once the final betrayal occurs, there is no going back. Not for them and not for you. They have crossed a line that makes reconciliation impossible, and you have crossed into a new understanding of your worth. Yes, the betrayal cuts deep, but it also carves out a path to your freedom. Because in seeing their full devotion to evil, you are finally released to choose your full devotion to truth, healing, and light.